said, I'm going to talk about sales tax issues for the construction industry. Okay, first thing we're going to do is talk about or give you our standard disclaimer. Be advised that the information in this presentation contains informal opinions that are only applicable to the factual situations referenced and to the statutes in existence as of the date of this presentation. The Department of Revenue may take a contrary position in the future to what is stated today. Any oral or written opinion by department personnel not pursuant to a petition for declaratory order under Iowa Administrative Code 701-7.24 is not binding on the department. So get that out of the way. Okay, so what is a construction contract? Construction contract is any agreement to provide labor and materials to build a structure. The contract could be with a general contractor, a subcontractor, or a builder. And parties involved could be an individual, corporation, a partnership, or really any other entity. Contractors, contractor retailers, repair companies, or a manufacturer contractor. There are four types. And the type of contractor is important for determining the tax obligations for that entity. First, the contractor, a general contractor, is a consumer of building materials and supplies. A contractor is required to pay sales tax on the purchase of those materials. For new construction, reconstruction, expansion, alteration, and remodeling, the contractor will pay tax on materials when purchased, but does not collect any tax from customers. In all other situations, taxes paid on materials when purchased, taxes collected on the labor and materials from customers, and on the sales tax return, the contractor would take credit for tax paid on materials if itemized on the invoice to the customer. Generally, a contractor will be constructing a structure and will not be charging any tax to his customer. Another type is a contractor retailer. A contractor retailer generally has a storefront and makes frequent sales to the public of supplies and materials. Contractor retailer may also sell directly to other contractors, but could also build residential or commercial structures. A contractor retailer must obtain a sales tax permit to collect and remit tax on any of the retail sales. These would be sales from the storefront, any taxable repairs that they would make, or any materials used in construction contracts. Let me clarify, those would be materials that are used in construction contracts by these other customers. When a contractor retailer is actually constructing a structure, they are responsible for paying the tax on the materials that they consume in that contract. Again, contractor retailers, they buy, as opposed to a general contractor buys their materials tax-free. Supplies materials will be resold. When they buy those materials, they provide their supplier with a valid sales tax exemption certificate. And they either pay sales or use tax. They'll pay sales tax to the supplier for supplies and materials that are not placed in inventory. And they'll pay use tax to the department if it's in the inventory, and then it's later removed for use by the business. In cases where they're making direct sales to a customer for materials, supplies, and equipment sold without installation, they would collect sales tax from the customer. And also when they perform repairs or installations, they would charge sales tax on the labor and the materials. They do not collect or remit sales or use tax in a construction contract. Materials that are withdrawn from the inventory for use in a construction contract, if it's performed outside the state of Iowa, the contractor retailer does not have to remit any use tax on those materials. Another entity would be a repair company. A repair company would generally do repairs on an existing structure that has been damaged, as opposed to building a new structure. They rarely or never sell supplies and materials, and they rarely or never build residential or commercial or any other structures. The sales tax responsibility for a repair company is different than a general contractor. They will itemize their materials and labor separately on the bill. They don't pay sales tax on the purchase of their building materials, but turn around and itemize them and charge tax to their customers for the repair. In a case where tax is paid on the materials when purchased, and they don't itemize materials and labor on their repair bill to their customer, they still are required to collect tax on the total bill. Manufacturer contractors sell to contractors or other consumers. They collect tax on the gross receipts unless the consumer gives them a valid exemption certificate. They also make retail sales and must hold a sales tax permit for that purpose. They may also sell or use their products in construction contracts. So when a manufacturer contractor does those various things, when they're primarily manufactured and they use the materials in a construction contract, they owe tax on their fabricated costs. This would be the material, the labor, power, transportation to the plant, other plant expenses such as overhead, but does not include installation on the job site. For new construction, they do not collect sales tax from the final customer. For taxable repair service, they will withdraw materials from their inventory tax-free and then charge tax to the final customer on the labor and materials. Again, if the construction contract is outside of Iowa, no sales or use tax would be due on the materials that they use. So what about tools, equipment, supplies, and other materials, not building materials? Contractors must pay tax at the time they're purchased on a variety of things. There's a list right here on this slide, examples. I'm not going to read all these to you. They do not become part of the structure, so the contractor would owe tax when these are purchased. For building materials and supplies that go into a construction contract, the contractor would pay tax on these as well. And there's a long list. Again, these are just examples, but all building materials and supplies that are consumed in the performance of a construction contract are subject to tax. They're effective July 1st of this year. There was a major change that exempts grain bins. This is because of Section 22 of House File 779 and creates the exemption for the sales price from the sale of a grain bin, including material or replacement parts used to construct or repair a grain bin. A grain bin, in this case, is defined as property that is vented and covered with corrugated metal or similar material, and that is primarily used to hold loose grain for drying or storage. Through informal conversations with stakeholders and legislators, the department has read this to mean that anything that is permanently attached to a grain bin would be exempt. The department is currently working on administrative rules to provide some additional clarity. Again, this only took effect July 1st this year. So stay tuned. We hope to have some additional guidance for you. Okay. For certain construction machinery and equipment, instead of a sales or use tax and the 1% local option tax, there is a 5% state excise tax on the purchase. This only applies to the following specific construction machinery and equipment: self-propelled building materials, pile drivers, and motorized scaffolding. Auxiliary attachments which improve the performance, safety, operation, or efficiency of that equipment, and replacement parts for that equipment. So in those cases, instead of either 6% state tax and possibly the 1% local option, a 5% state tax, excise tax is applied. For all other machinery, Iowa sales tax and, if applicable, local option sales tax are required when the machinery is used directly and primarily by contractors, subcontractors, and builders. This is for new construction, reconstruction, alteration, expansion, or remodeling of real property or structures. If rented for this purpose, however, the rental payments are exempt from tax. If you watched either of the prior webinars, Terry mentioned that in Iowa, that only specific enumerated services are taxable. In the construction industry, there are several enumerated taxable services, such as demolition, electrical and electronic repair and installation, excavating and grading, house or building moving, landscaping, lawn care, tree trimming and removal, painting, papering, interior decorating, pipe fitting and plumbing, roof shingle and glass repair, sign construction and installation, welding and well drilling. And there was a change effective July 1st this year. Carpentry repair and installation is subject to tax. Again, if those services are on or in connection with new construction, there would be no tax on that labor. I guess when I say new construction, the actual exemption is for labor that is performed on or connected with alteration, expansion, new construction, reconstruction, or remodeling of buildings or structures. In those cases, those services are not taxable, but for in all other cases, such as repairing tangible personal property or real property, the labor is taxable if it's one of the enumerated services. If you have a question as to the service you perform, whether it's taxable, please check our website. We have all that information on there. Okay. There's some additional considerations for when labor is or isn't taxable. One of the situations has to do with the timing. It needs to be close or near to construction. For example, if you excavate as part of a construction project, it is exempt. If it's grading for seed a year after construction, that's taxable. There's also a physical relationship to consider. So if you construct a new building, machinery that's installed during the machinery building construction would be exempt. A magnitude of service. A classic example we always talk about, if you have repair work done on your roof and they re-shingling, replacing a few shingles, that's considered a repair. That is a taxable service. However, if the entire roof needs to be replaced, that is considered a construction project and there would be no tax on the labor. When items are replaced, for instance, replacing a working furnace for an energy efficient furnace, that's considered reconstruction or remodeling. However, if it's a broken furnace and you're replacing it for a repair, that is considered taxable. If you have, it's not unusual that you'll have a construction contract that will include both new construction and repair. You'll need to itemize your statement for taxable repair labor and exempt construction. If it's not itemized, then the full amount would be subject to tax. So some examples, some differences between repairs and new construction. Repair is defined as to mend, restore, maintain, replace, or service, to restore an existing structure that has been damaged. Typically, we say when in doubt, just treat it as a taxable repair if you're not sure. Examples of a repair would be broken or defective glass or windows, individual or damaged roof shingles, replacing original wiring in a house or a building, replacing a defective garage door or a garage door opener, kitchen cabinets, a tub, shower, faucet, water heater, furnace, or central air conditioning compressor. New construction, reconstruction, alteration, expansion, or remodeling. I usually refer to that as new construction under that umbrella. Labor is exempt from sales tax for real property and structures only, not on tangible personal property. A contractor would pay tax to their supplier for all their materials. They would not charge tax to the customer for the labor or materials. And there's some examples here. There's some examples of what new construction is, reconstruction. I don't need to go through all these examples, but they're there, and you can see more information on our website. We have also a booklet that deals with construction contracts. Another difference that we have is for certain specific designated exempt entities. And only for those, the only entities that fall into this category are private, nonprofit educational institutions in Iowa, nonprofit private museums in Iowa, tax certifying or tax levying bodies, or governmental subdivisions of Iowa, including the State Board of Regents, the State Department of Human Services, and the State Department of Transportation. Habitat for Humanity is a designated exempt entity. Rural water districts organized under Iowa Code Chapter 357A. Municipally owned solid waste facilities which sell all or part of their processed waste as fuel. All divisions, boards, commissions, agencies, or instrumentalities of state, federal, county, or municipal government which do not have earnings going to the benefit of an equity investor or stockholder. These are the only entities that fall under the category of designated exempt entities. And a special note here, nonprofit hospitals are not designated exempt entities. So what does that mean? For designated exempt entity, they can issue a special exemption certificate directly to their contractors and subcontractors. That exemption certificate will allow the contractor to purchase the materials from their suppliers free from sales tax. They can also use building materials that are in their tax-free inventory without assessing tax on that. Again, our department website has more information on this category. So a designated exempt entity will register their contract, the specific contract with the Department of Revenue. This includes information listing their contractors and subcontractors and is an online application. Then they must provide each contractor with an exemption certificate and authorization letter that has been developed exclusively for this purpose. These letters are printed from our website where you go directly for the application. The contractor or subcontractors then take the certificate to their material suppliers, which will allow them to purchase those materials for the contract free of sales tax. The suppliers that take those certificates should keep them in their records at least for 3 years. And why do we do that? What is the benefit for the exempt entity? The contracts don't include Iowa sales tax, which lowers their bid. They do not need to obtain a contractor statement after the project is completed. And they do not need to apply to the Department of Revenue for a refund of the Iowa sales tax. If you'd like more information, you can go to our website, which is tax.iowa.gov. We have a contractor's guide. And if you have any specific questions, you can contact our taxpayer services. There's our phone number listed there, 800-367-3388 or 515-281-3114, or you can email us at idr@iowa.gov. You can also subscribe to updates with the department, and you can subscribe and you will get email updates as they become available. And a lot of that information, and they have specific information you can sign up for. Topics include newsroom, tax information, e-file and pay, due date reminders, electronic filing, economic, fiscal, and statistical information, and information on specific industries. The Department of Revenue also makes use of social media. We have Twitter accounts, and we have a Facebook page. So try those out. The purpose of this presentation is intended for general educational purposes only. And I will remind you that if you're involved in an audit or a protest, you must contact the department representative that you've been working with on that issue to answer your questions. So it looks like we have some questions up here, if I can read them. So here's one from Jackie. With the new optional sales tax effective July 1st for some cities, that it may cover multiple counties, which county do you actually apply the new 1% additional sales tax? Some cities that may cover multiple, okay. The physical address determines who, such as West Des Moines, Iowa is in Polk, Dallas, and another county, but the exchange occurred with the physical location being in Dallas County, so we collect tax for Dallas County and disregard the new tax for West Des Moines. It sounds like you're answering your own question here. This is kind of a complicated question. I'm going to probably take a pass on this one and have to get back to you on that if you don't mind. We'll send if you want to send us an email, we can give that to you. Okay, so we have another one here. Can you clarify the sales tax responsibilities for contractors doing remodeling across state lines? Okay, so when you have, for contractors, for a strict contractor, they're going to pay tax on their materials when they buy those. And assuming that they're an Iowa contractor, they would already have paid tax on those materials. If they're doing remodeling across state lines, when they perform that contract in another state, there is no tax. There would be no tax on the project. There would be no Iowa tax on it. You'd have to look at each other state's tax laws. If they're a contractor retailer, they would start with a tax-free inventory on their materials, and they would not have to pay tax on those materials for work that is conducted outside of Iowa. Again, if you need further clarification on that, please drop us an email and we'll give you a specific answer. With any sales tax question, sales tax laws, they're very fact-based, and it depends on the specific circumstances. All right, we have one here from Sarah. Tree trimming and removal due to storm damage, is that taxable, or where can I find that information? Funny you should bring that up, because the next webinar here immediately after the construction, I'm going to be talking about landscaping and lawn care, and we can save it for that. So I'll come back to that one. Ann has a question: if you put in a new garage door in an existing opening, is that new construction or repair? Again, I think we talked about that. You're replacing the door because it was damaged. That would be a repair, would not be subject to tax. If you add on a new garage, and you're putting, and you're adding, let's say you have a 2-car garage, you're adding a third stall, and you put in a new garage door in that would be considered an expansion, fall under the new construction exemption, and there would be no tax in that particular case. Our annual inspections and testing taxable. This is from Cindy. Again, not all services are subject to tax, only those that are specifically enumerated. An annual inspection, again, I think Terry mentioned in a couple of the prior sessions here, it depends. Just a visual inspection generally is not taxable, but one of the enumerated services is testing. So if there's certain testing involved would make it taxable. It would depend, again, on the specific facts related to that particular case. So again, I'm going to have to say it depends on that one. Okay. Trying to read these questions here. It looks like there's a lot of them. Okay, we are an out-of-state manufacturer contractor that installs our product through construction contracts. sometimes in Iowa. We receive our materials outside Iowa and pay our local tax rate, which is lower than Iowa's. How do we prepare the use tax form to pay Iowa the difference? That's a good question. So if your tax rate is lower than Iowa's, then you would owe the difference when you're consuming those materials. I believe, Terry, do you know?
Yeah,
I'm gonna let Terry jump in on this one. This is a general use tax question, not specific to construction.
Very good question. If you paid some tax to another state that was lower than the Iowa tax rate of 6%, you do owe us the difference. And you're going to laugh at this, but how do you remit that to us? Well, you have to do a consumer's use tax return, or I guess it would be I think it's a retail use tax permit that you have to have for that. We don't give consumer's use tax to out-of-state businesses. But as far as doing the calculation, you're going to have to back into it. And I said you're going to laugh, but you've got to back into it so the form comes out so you're remitting the proper amount of tax. So back into it, keep good records as to why you did what you did, how you did it, in case you're ever audited by the department. But that's the only way it's going to work out on the form. If you owe us $100, you owe us 1% tax. You can't figure 1% tax on our returns. So do the creative math to back into the amount so it shows that what you're gonna owe, and you remit the proper amount of tax. That's basically the gist of it.
Okay. I knew there was something tricky about that.
That's right.
Okay. Will there be more guidance on carpentry repair and installation of taxable labor? That's a good question. I haven't heard that there is going to be. The difference that took effect July 1st. Previously, only carpentry repair was taxable. Now it's carpentry repair and installation. I've not heard that there will be, but if you need a specific answer on a specific question for that, again, send us an email. Basically, what it has done in the past. There were many of the enumerated services taxed repair and installation. Carpentry did not, and this was just bringing it in line with most of those services that are related to the construction industry. So, okay, we're just about out of time right now, I think, right?
You've got a couple more minutes. I don't know if there's any of those, if you read through them, that you want to try and tackle before we have to jump into landscaping and law.
Sure. Okay, I'll take a look. I'll answer Denise's question. If the contractor is paying sales tax at time of purchase and then charges customer again on repairs, isn't that double taxation? And I'd have to say the answer to that is no, because you're looking at two separate transactions. A contractor pays tax on the materials because they're considered the consumer of those materials. Now, when they're generally not doing repairs, but when they do a repair, then they are allowed to take, again, it depends how they itemize their repair job, but they are allowed to take a credit for the tax paid on the materials. So hopefully that would take care of what you refer to as a double taxation situation. I think we'll wait on the rest of the questions then.
Okay. So you can go ahead. So we are now into the final section of our tax blitz, sales tax blitz here. We've got Paul again that's going to be talking around landscaping and lawn care. So if you just joined for the landscaping and lawn care portion, I'll post the PowerPoint in the chat for you to follow along with. Lawn care and landscape questions, if you can put those in the Q&A box. If we weren't able to get to your question during construction, we'll try and follow either up with you on that after the presentation, or if we have time at the end of landscape and lawn care, we'll hopefully be able to answer a few more of those. This section will also be recorded separately and be available as a webinar that you'll be able to watch archived at a later date. So with that, we'll turn it back over to Paul to take us through landscaping and lawn care sales tax issues.
Okay. Well, welcome. We're talking a little bit about landscaping and lawn care. First thing I want to do again is go over our disclaimer. Please be advised that the information in this presentation contains informal opinions and are only applicable to the factual situations referenced and to the statutes in existence as of the date of this presentation. The Department of Revenue may take a contrary position in the future to what is stated today. Any oral or written opinion by department personnel not pursuant to a petition for declaratory order under Iowa Administrative Code Rule 701-7.24 is not, I'm not reading that, is not binding on the department. It's off my screen. So maybe we can fix that. Okay, got that disclaimer out of the way. All right, so in Iowa, not all services are taxable. In fact, the rule is that services in Iowa are not subject to tax unless they are specifically enumerated in the code. Today, we're going to talk about some that are enumerated: landscaping, lawn care, and tree trimming and removal services. They are subject to Iowa sales and use tax. So persons that provide such services must obtain a sales tax permit and remit sales tax to the Department of Revenue. So landscaping, what is landscaping? Well, landscaping means arranging or modifying the natural condition of a given parcel or tract of land to make the land suitable for public or private use or enjoyment. However, a service that is required to be performed by a landscape architect who is registered under Iowa Code Section 544B.2 is not subject to tax if the service is actually performed by that landscaper. By that landscape architect, and the charge for the service is separately stated on the invoice and separately billed to the customer. Yes, I will refer to both. Okay.
Yeah, because it looks like posting the slides in chat for everyone, but it looks like on the format, for some reason in number 4, we've got a little extra text on there that's kind of running off the bottom. So
yeah, we'll do our best. Okay. Landscaping materials. The gross receipts from landscaping materials that are used in providing landscaping services and which are sold to final consumers are subject to sales tax. So the final consumer means the owner of the land to which the landscaping materials are applied, or a general building contractor when the landscaping contractor contracts with the general building contractor. Landscaping materials include sod, dirt, trees, shrubbery, bulbs, sand, rocks, wood chips, and other similar materials. So when the retailer of sod, dirt, trees, etc., and other similar materials installs these items as part of a contract for landscaping or improving land for a lump sum, the entire gross receipts are subject to tax. Any retailer's charges for landscaping are taxable. Okay, so, however, a retailer's charges for non-taxable services are not taxable if contracted for separately, or if no written contract exists, if the charges are itemized separately on the invoice. So, a sodding contractor, here's an example. A sodding contractor agrees to furnish and install 20 yards of sod for a lump sum. The sodding contractor then must charge the customer sales tax on the lump sum. Another example, Company A enters into a contract for the landscaping of an existing office building. The Company A agrees to furnish the shrubs, white rock, and wood chips. Company A also contracts to install all of the landscaping materials for an hourly fee. In this particular case, Company A's hourly fee is taxable. Now, if the contractor charges separately for a service that is not taxable, the charge is excluded from tax because it was separately contracted for. There are situations where a landscaper acts as a construction contractor. So any portion of a landscaping service that includes labor and materials to erect a structure is considered a construction contract and not landscaping service, and is generally exempt from sales tax. Structures that are in this category would include such items as retaining walls, lawn lighting systems, lawn irrigation systems, pools, walkways, and any other permanently attached items to realty or real estate. To be exempt from sales tax, the invoice, however, must state the charges for construction separate from landscaping charges. By statute, a landscaper is considered a consumer of any construction materials used in the performance of a construction contract and must therefore pay sales tax and any local option tax on all construction materials that they purchase. Iowa also taxes lawn care. So what is lawn care? Lawn care refers to services specifically related to the care and maintenance of lawns. This includes mowing, trimming, watering, fertilizing, reseeding, resodding, and killing of insects, moles, other vermin, weeds, or fungi that may be threatening a lawn. A lawn is defined as an open space between woods or ground, as around a house or in a garden or park that is covered with grass and is generally kept mowed or required to be kept mowed. Some examples, non-exclusive examples of properties that would contain a lawn would include cemetery grounds, golf courses, parks, and residential or commercial properties containing one or more buildings or structures. Tree trimming and removal is also an enumerated service and is also therefore taxable. Tree trimming and tree removal mean the removal of any portion of a tree in whole or in part, including branches, trunks, and stumps. A tree is defined and includes any woody perennial plant, including shrubs with main stems or trunks made of wood. Okay. The sale of any wood that is derived from a tree trimming or removal service, such as for sale as firewood, constitutes the sale of tangible personal property. So if a tree trimming company provides the service of tree trimming or removal and then retains any of the wood, the byproduct for later sales, such as wood chips or firewood, that service is not provided as a sale for resale. The service provider must charge tax on both the service of tree trimming and removal, and later must also charge sales tax on the sale of those byproducts derived from that service. So if they come in and cut down your tree, they're going to charge tax on that. If they turn around and if they keep the tree and sell it as firewood, they also have to charge sales tax on the firewood.
So to fully answer Sarah's question, it does not matter why they're removing the tree. If they're tree trimming or removal, even if it's due to storm damage,
it is subject to tax.
It's subject to tax. All right, there we go. We'll knock that one out.
There you go. All right. Okay. How to bill customers. Remember the total charge for lawn care service is subject to Iowa sales tax. It doesn't matter if you itemize it or it's a lump sum. And there's a couple examples here. I think you can see them. In the first one, in this first case, the service provider, in this first one, they itemize the invoice to the customers, and in that particular case, the invoice shows the amount and the cost and the type of product. So if you look at it, there's $300, or the total charge is $300. The Iowa sales tax was 6%, and the local option 1% for a grand total of $321. It's itemized below in the lower section. It's kind of hard for me to see on mine, but they broke it down into the various charges to come up with the grand total. It doesn't matter, however, it's itemized or a lump sum, though, because the entire amount is taxable. The second example we have here is one where they didn't itemize it. They didn't itemize the chemicals and the fertilizer. Tax was paid on those items at the time of purchase. And in that particular case, because they didn't itemize it, they still have to charge tax in the full amount even though they pay tax up front. Okay, so a landscaping company is not required to purchase product for resale as previously explained when they're buying it from their supplier. If they pay sales tax to their supplier for supplies, then they must charge, and they must still charge tax on the entire amount when they bill their customer. So how do we report and remit the sales tax? Well, businesses must remit the sales tax to the department in the filing period in which the service was performed. So, for example, if the service was performed in the second quarter, April through June, and the customer didn't pay until July, the second quarter return must still be used to report the sales and remit the tax due. So the service cannot wait until the third quarter to show that. It must be included in the quarter when the service was performed. Another thing you have to consider when you for landscapers is, do they have employees? If a landscaper does have employees, it must withhold federal and state income taxes from the employees' paychecks. And this means in that particular case, they would have to register to become a withholding agent with both the Internal Revenue Service and with the Iowa Department of Revenue. Employees who make more than $200 per week and claim they are exempt from withholding must still complete the W-4. Okay. All right. Let's take some of your questions that we have up here. I haven't.
So most are still, I don't think we answered the one we had on lawn care and landscape. I've not seen any other new lawn care or landscape questions.
Okay. So some of these questions don't, as Patrick said, don't deal specifically with lawn care and landscaping, but are more to do with the construction industry. But since we have the time, we'll
see if we can.
What do we have? Another 15 minutes here.
So one that's probably close and goes a lot with it. If we look at Sarah Lee's question, talks about snow removal, because a lot of landscape land care companies in the winter,
right? They
find another way to make money.
So, yes, again, only those services that are are specifically enumerated in the code are subject to tax. So, a lot of companies that do in the summer do provide lawn care in the service. They turn around and do snow removal, and snow removal is not listed as an enumerated service. So the question is snow removal subject to sales tax if you are removing snow for, let's say, Walmart? Is the salt you put on the parking lot subject to sales tax to Walmart or to the contractor? Okay, the snow removal itself is not taxable. It depends how if you are selling salt to Walmart specifically and they're applying it, you would have to charge Walmart the tax. As a contractor, however, if you are consuming the salt yourself, then you would pay the tax on the salt. Let's look at, all right, I'm kind of avoiding this one. Let's look at this first one from Laura. I have an exempt entity for a contract for art gallery and culture center. Okay, that doesn't have a construction project. Can this be used? The form is dated from, well, this is a specific question on a specific taxpayer. We probably really shouldn't answer, but I'll try to make it into a more general question. The form, the work was performed in May of 19. Would this be tax exempt? If they are an exempt entity and they registered with the department and they issued the contractor the exemption certificate which was used, I believe in that particular case it would still be exempt. When the exempt entity registered, they would have had to identify the projects.
I'm going to scroll you down here.
Okay. All right.
So Trish asked, talking about when you got a couple questions around
Sure.
this. If the service is started in the second quarter but finished in the third quarter, which quarter gets the sales tax remittance?
Well, that's a good question.
And I guess Mary's question also goes along with it, so let's throw it in there. For lawn care, do you also pay the sales tax in the quarter the service is provided instead of when it is paid?
Oh, okay, I'm looking at the wrong question. Okay, the last question on here, there's two from Mary.
Two
Okay.
similar, yeah.
Okay, so Mary, your question, for lawn care, do you also pay the sales tax in the quarter the service is provided instead of when it is paid? Yes, that is correct. If you're talking about, if what you're really asking is, do you remit the sales tax that you collect? Yes, it's paid at when the service is provided. If you're asking, when do you pay sales tax on your materials or any of your other things, you would pay that up front. I think you're asking the sales tax you collect from your customer. It goes back to at the time the service was provided.
Yeah, I think both of these questions are around the slides you had where they have not gotten paid yet by their customer, but they're asking to remit the sales tax because the service is provided.
Right, it's still due during that quarter when the service was provided. So then we had the one, was it, I don't know if we answered Trish's when she has one when the service, I guess in that particular case, if the service is started in the second quarter but finished in the third quarter, which quarter gets the sales tax remittance? I'm going to have to ask you to send us an email on that particular question. A lot of times, if they're being billed, generally, what we'll say, if you've got a $10,000 contract and there are timely, what are the payments that are made throughout that period? Tax is upfront. Tax applies at the beginning of the contract. I believe that would be the same in this case. This is a little bit different. So if you wouldn't mind dropping us a line with an email, we'll get you an answer on that one. Okay. For lawn care chemical applications for lawn care chemical applications are subject to sales tax. Oh, that's a question?
Yeah, our chemical applications subject to sales tax in terms of lawn care.
Right, they are, and I think if we went back to, I don't know which, that would fall under the lawn care. I don't know which of the slides had that on there, but yes, that would be taxable. That's a taxable service. Okay, we have one about bin construction contractors from Renee. Do bin construction contractors pay sales tax on bin materials when purchased from their suppliers? This goes back to the construction industry webinar that we had earlier. And effective July 1st of 2019, there was a change that dealt specifically with for grain bins. And let me see if I can go back and find that real quick on here. I've got a paper copy. I don't know if I could find it any other way. Okay. Okay, well, let's look at the question. Do bin construction contractors pay sales tax on bin materials when purchased from their suppliers? Okay, here it is. Effective July 1st, 2019, the sales price from the sale of a grain bin, including materials or replacement parts used to construct it, is exempt from sales tax. So we said that the sale price from the sale of the grain bin is exempt from tax, meaning it's considered the materials used to construct and repair. Again, this is something effective July 1st. We're still working on our administrative rules on that. So we're going to have to wait until those come out to answer that specifically. Okay, any particular one you want me to go to here? Should I just go back to the top or not?
I've been checking to make sure they're still here, so most of these people are still in the webinar, so we'll try and answer your questions.
Okay.
Kelly, Janet, Gregory, but we've got Lynn has a general question she asks. So when we've had questions that are a little hard to answer, where do you want them to go? So I clicked back on your slide. You can move your slides to where you want to go. The best way would be when they either Terry or Paul has said, send us an email. They're looking for it to go to IDR to Iowa.
Yes.
Iowa.gov. Should be on the screen there then.
Up on the screen there, and then the department will make sure they get directed to the best person to answer the question, which may or may not be Paul or Terry.
Correct.
right?
Yep.
Yep.
So there we go.
Thank you. All right.
So we got so we do have a bit of a landscaper question here from Crystal.
Okay. If an out-of-state landscaper, a retail contractor, builds a patio or small retaining wall and plants shrubs in that new area, do we need to itemize the invoice between construction and planting? If this is done, do we collect sales tax on the landscaping, labor, and materials? Okay, so how do we do this? And do not collect sales tax on the materials and labor for building the patio or retaining wall, but then remit use tax on the materials for the patio. Okay, so you're an out-of-state landscaper, you're building a patio, or I'm assuming that this is all taking place in Iowa. You're building a patio in Iowa or small retaining wall and also planting shrubs in the new area. So a patio and a retaining wall are both considered structures. So in that particular case, there would be no tax on that construction project. Planting shrubs in the new area, if they're on or related to that, I think we talked a little bit about that in, let's see where we're at. Okay, go back. Landscapers as construction contractors. So any portion of a landscaping service that includes labor and materials to erect a structure is considered construction, not landscaping, and is generally exempt from sales tax. And to be exempt, the invoice must state the charges for construction contracting separate from landscaping charges. I think that's what you're asking. Do you need to itemize it? Yes, you do. So it has to be itemized in the contract and on the bill. Now, the second part of your question, if this is done, do we collect sales tax on the landscaping, labor, and materials? Or we do not collect sales tax on materials for the building? Okay. So you would not collect, in either case here, you're not going to collect tax on the patio, but on the landscaping, labor, and materials, you would not collect tax because it's on or related to new construction. It's kind of a complex question. Again, if that doesn't answer your question, if you want to send us an email, again at that same email address, idr@io.gov. We can, if you want to add any additional information to that question, we can respond to you more specifically. All right. Should subcontractors, here's one from Janet, should subcontractors charge labor to general contractors on new construction?
And she said, sorry, I meant sales tax.
Gotcha. Okay. So,
yeah,
so it'd probably be good for you to charge labor, but probably that's separate from the sales tax. The subcontractors, if it's new construction, there would be no tax on the labor for the general contractor or for the subs. It's all on or related to new construction. So no, you would not charge tax on that. Would asphalt overlay of an existing parking lot be considered new construction? I would say that is not new construction.
So Kelly, that's your question. Would asphalt overlay of an existing parking lot be considered new construction? It's sounding like it's not new construction, remodeling, expansion. So now the question that I would have is that service even subject to tax? And I don't know that it is.
I don't think so.
If you want to contact, look on our website, I'm pretty sure that an asphalt overlay is not a taxable service to begin with.
I agree.
Okay. All right, here's one from Gregory. If you build sheds that are built and then move to the site, do they qualify as new construction? If so, would you pay sales tax on materials but not bill the customer? Again, generally my idea of what a shed would be that you could haul and move to a site and install it. It would not generally be considered new construction. We talked a little bit earlier about the permanency of things. There's a lot of factors. A shed, to me, I would say would not be considered a permanent structure, that if you're going to put it on a flatbed and bring it and set it in somebody's yard, Therefore, it's not considered new construction and you would be selling them the shed. So you would then charge tax to your customer. I'm gonna pass on the roll-off dumpster one right now. How long can we expect an answer to take? Hey, you know what? Let's ask Terry, how long should they expect to wait?
Well, right now I know when I left this morning, the emails were down pretty low. So I would think within a few days we can get some response for you. I think I can turn around on those fairly quickly if I'm the one that's going to get it. So we're doing pretty good right now on turnaround.
Very subject to the time of the year that you ask the question.
That's correct. This time of year, pretty good.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Kelly, to answer your question, when the recording is up, you'll be able to find it on iSourceLink. There won't be a specific email that goes out, but we will have that up a week from today. So a week from today, you'll be able to come back and watch it. There will be a follow-up email that goes out that will have that webpage in it. And then also we'll have information on thanking you for attending. So you can be able to watch for that to see it go live. But you'll have to go to the website to get the recording. It won't come in an email.
Okay, let's look at Sherry's question. If your landscaper replaces part of a chain link fence that surrounds your existing building, should the labor and materials be taxed? Again, a fence would be considered a structure. If they're just replacing a part of it, that would be considered a repair. And in that particular case, should labor and material be taxed? That's I would consider that part of landscaping, and yes, they would charge tax on that. Again, it depends on how much of the, if they're putting an entire new fence in that case, it would be considered exempt. But in your question, you asked just a part of that fence. Okay.
And so then Elizabeth's question, we talked about whether when a project starts versus when it stops and how that reporting of sales tax is done, if that's the same as lawn care.
Okay, sure. Well, a little bit, your question asked, does construction follow the same reporting? If it's truly a new construction projects, which would be exempt from tax, we wouldn't have this problem. If you're talking instead of not truly a construction project, but a repair, then it would also be in the quarter when the service was performed. Now, again, if it's going to cover two different quarters, that's the question that we asked to forward to idr@io.gov and get a better answer than I'm going to give you today on that, if you don't mind. Thanks, Elizabeth.
And the dumpster one too. That issue's come up before. I know we've got to get something from legal on that.
Yeah, so Gregory, you had a question on a roll-off dumpster service and whether or not that qualifies as part of new construction. As Terry was just saying to the side here, we need to get some advice from our legal folks on that. So if you wouldn't mind sending that question in again to idr@io.gov, we'll get you a better answer. Okay.